kind of scraps. And I'm going to try to allay a little bit of the unknowing about the alternating points column draw feature in our brilliant StitchArtist 3 software. But unfortunately, sometimes it takes talking technical before we can get to the actual fun part, and that's the playing. So let's try to get to a bit of an understanding about what this stitch is. First, in order to understand the stitch, you have to understand how to input it into the software. It is, by virtue of the fact that it says it's alternating left-right points, I've drawn the schematic of how you would put your points in. Please understand, even though they are put in at left to right, you can put them in right to left. It doesn't matter. You can put them in up to down. What matters is that the first point and the third point are always going to be on the same side of your design. And it could be, like I said, left, it could be right, it could be up, it could be down. On this drawing, the first point I put in is an orange point, just for visuals. And then I bring my mouse over and I put in number 2, which is a blue dot. And it can be a line, it can be a curve, it could be a cusp. It is your choice only. The mechanics of this, however, are that from the orange dot to the blue dot, from stitch number 1 or point number 1 to point number 2, do you see the red arrow? That becomes my line of inclination in my design. In other words, that's the way my stitches are going to flow. As I come back and I want to put in point number 3, the dashed line with the arrow brings me to the same side as number 1. All my orange dots are on the same side, and I put in my third node, or third point. Sorry, I'm used to calling nodes. Then red arrow over to the same side as my other blue dot, or all of my even numbers, and I place my point. My line of inclination has changed. Here you can see it's almost horizontal, and now we're starting to go at an angle. Arrow over, fifth line, or fifth point, line of inclination, and I put in my 6th point, and then I close it off. My outer boundaries of this column, and you can see the solid black line, it does create a column, although it is a kind of pointed column. It's an elbow. That is the outer lines of my column stitch. So these are my lines of inclination. All of my orange points need to be on the same side. All of my blue points need to be on the same side. Another way of saying that, my odd numbered points are on the same side, my even numbered points are on the same side. So in the software, what would this look like? I bumped up the density on this one, but you can see if you look very closely, here are my lines of inclination. And you can see what my stitches are doing. They're fanning out. It looks like a zigzag stitch in between the two boundaries, which are here and here. So this is the normal stitch for the column stitch. Only thing I did was change the density so you could see it on the slide. Again, da 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 da. Now, what happens if I select the contour stitch? And I'll show you where all these are in just a moment when we move to the software. Here's my same elbow. But by selecting the contour stitch, remember how my stitches ran this way, my lines of inclination? What has happened, my lines of inclination are still going the same direction, but the path that my stitches follow, and you can see the green dashed lines, changes. That path flows perpendicular to my lines of inclination. So I'm going to get this sort of a look. In other words, the stitches are going to follow the outer boundary. What does that look like in the software? it looks sort of like this. Not sure why this happened, but I've discovered that sometimes the contour feature is just a bit wonky and it takes playing with it. But you can see I still have my lines of inclination here, and my stitches are now going perpendicular to my line of inclination and following the outer aspect of my boundary. So it gets wider here, and it moves back and creates a little bit different fan appearance. There is another contour on the drop-down menu, and it's Contour 2. Now, I've not changed anything except selecting Contour 2 in the software. And this is what it comes up looking like. Now, you need to do the stitch outs. That's all I have to say. You need to do the stitch outs. And you can see that this looks a little bit different. The best advice I could give to you is just simply to play. Just play. And now we're going to create a butterfly wing. I've opened my Brilliant StitchArtist 3 software, and I've imported my graphic from ClipArt Panda. And again, I'm going to make sure that I have, once I imported it, if I couldn't see it, I look up here for my grayed out icon, engaged. I've quoted a new word. Instead of engaged, it's gray, it's engaged. That means I can use it. I hope you like that one. I thought it was good. And, sorry, I'm going to select my column alternating left-right points. That would be on the Draw menu. That would be the top row, the fourth tool in. So I'm going to select that. Again, it's gray, engaged. And you can see that in my stitch, it's given me automatically the column stitch. Okay. So I am going to zoom into my butterfly so that you can see it. And really, I'm only going to do the top wing, the top left wing, and the mechanics of this are all the same. So, and you can do as much of it. You can have multiple layers. You do what you want to do. But to show you and illustrate my points that I made a few minutes ago, I'm going to just do this. So I'm going to enter my first point, which is number 1, and my second point, number 2. Now I'm going to come over here to my left-hand side, my odd numbered side, and I'm adding curved points. So I'm going to add a curved point there, 3, curved point there, 4, curved point there, and I'm going to end this. And I know it doesn't look like the wing, but once I put my stitches in, I am going to actually show you how to create a smoother curve. So I'm going to enter, and you can see that I have my first step for my column stitches, and we're going to zoom in, and it's pretty dense, but I'm going to leave everything the same. I have my lines of inclination. I am going to hover over this one, and I'm going to move it out here. So you can see I've moved my curve point, and I'm going to make a pull on my Bezier handles, and look how pretty that is. There we go. I'm going to hover my point. And that is not a curve, but let's see what we can do. Let's right click on that, and I'm going to add a curved line. And let's click on this point, and I'm going to pull on my Bezier hand. Whoops, didn't want to do, well, there we go. So I'm going to move this point down a little bit. Remember, it's my artwork. Well, it's not my artwork, it's my design. And that's all I'm going to do. I'm going to maybe, this little part over here kind of concerns me. It's pretty square. So as I zoom over to it, there's my inclination line, and pull it up to my outer aspect. And I'm going to move down. I want to show you, I think this is cool, and I really did just discover this. I'm not really adding any more lines of inclination, but if I hover my mouse over my outline, I can get this little squiggly line, real technical term there, and I can add a point right there. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to left mouse click, took a double click, and now I have another curve. Again, I'm going to add curved. I'm not sure why that one's not coming up curved. But anyway, so let's zoom out. Wrong thing. Go over here, and I'm going to select the H and zoom to my hoop. And you can see that I've pretty well approximated the outline of the wing. Now I'm going to go over here to my density, and I'm going to leave it the same for now. And I'm going to click on immediately to the right. This is in my properties, lower properties pane. You can see I've got my picture. I'm sorry, I'm bouncing around. Go up to the objects menu. I have my design one, which is that part of the wing, and I have the column stitch, and you can tell right here it says column. And then I'm going to go to the properties pane below, and I'm going to make a few changes. The first change I'm going to do is in this first row. This is my stitch. This is the underlay. I'm going to select that, and I'm going to toggle off the underlay. I want no underlay on this, none. And I'm going to go back to my stitch properties, and I'm going to select contour. And I'm really not sure why it comes up quite that far away, but I'm going to bring down my density, bring up the density. There we go. I'm going to set the number of points, and this is where it's a little bit wonky. Sometimes this moves my, I'm really not sure why it does that. Sometimes it moves my stitches further up, or my rows further apart. Sometimes it moves them closer. You just have to play with it. And I wish I could explain it, but I haven't gotten it to work the same twice. So I'm going to move it down to about C7, 5. Let's go down to 3. Now remember, default's 4. So if I go up to 4 on that, let's go back to normal and see what happens. There's my normal at 4. Let's take it up to 7 right now. Now let's select contour 1 and see how big that is. Now if I go up to 9, it gives me exactly what I want. We'll go up to 10. Hard for me to explain. 11.9. We'll leave it at 11.9. What this has done is this actually, it gives me some shading in there. As the stitches come closer to the edge, they get closer together. Okay, so this is the maximum width in this area. I can square off my ends, and that means at this end they'll come out nice and square. Now watch what I'm going to do, because I'm going to grab this line of inclination and I'm going to move it up to there. Whoops, that didn't work. I'm going to add a point right here. Remember how I added a point? I've got my little squiggly line, double click, and now I'm going to move that in, and look what's happening. I'm going to adjust my Bezier curves, and I can add more points if I choose. But do you see how that's giving me my ribbon? Again, down here, I hover over my outer aspect, get my squiggly line, I love that technical term, double click, add my node, and move it in. Or let's see what happens if we go cockeyed. I just play with it until I get something that I really like. I'm going to add another node here. Remember, it takes 3 nodes or 3 points to make a curve. Hover, squiggly line, double click. I'll pull this one out. And as I move it in, my curve is changing. I can actually Move it up a little bit. Seriously, this is all about playing. Once you get to once you get the mechanics of the stitch itself, it's all about playing. And there you have a wing with ripples in it, and I could be adding ripples until the cows come home. It's just a matter of personal preference. I hope that this little scrap of information will help you generate some really interesting gems. Until next time, bye.